Welcome to Loop TV. I'm your host, Gene Munster, joined today by Rosenblatt Securities equity analyst covering digital media, Mark Zgutowicz. Welcome, Mark. Your line of work is near and dear to my heart. I spent many years being a sell-side analyst. I appreciate all the dumpster diving you're doing and all the focus on the content world, how it is evolving. And that is our topic today, is really to step aside from the Amazon MGM news and look at the companies that major in content and what they're doing, what's unique about what they're doing, and ultimately what they can do better or how they can grow their business. So I thought it'd be helpful to bring Mark along and he can enlighten us about what each of the major players are doing. Just some quick context is that there are 12 streaming services, kind of pay for monthly streaming services. They range between $5 and $15 per month. There are 3 that have, we'll call it critical mass of more than 100 million. That is Netflix, Disney, and Amazon Prime Video. It's a guess on Prime Video. And then, of course, there are a handful of others that don't have the 100 million, but are important to keep an eye on. So welcome, Mark. We're going to bring you in here, and I'm just going to go right down the list. And if you can, I'll bring up a company and maybe talk about what's unique about their offering, and separately, if you were running their business, what changes you would make to continue to grow the business over the next 5 years. So we'll start with Netflix.
Yeah, sure. So Netflix is really a volume-driven model, and it's worked quite well. They spend the most by long shot on content. This year, I think they're slated to spend close to 17 billion on original content. If you compare that to Disney Plus, it's closer to 5 to 6 billion, and Hulu, which is under Disney Plus, is right around the same in terms of 5-6 billion. So definitely a big multiple in terms of volume.
And how many shows does that get you? What is 18 billion or 16 billion get you?
Yeah, so this year, I'm not quite sure the number of shows. I know last year we had them slated at about 540 shows that were released. So that's a big number relative to, if you think about that in context, with like Disney Plus, that was closer to 60 in terms of original shows. Prime Videos, I think, was right around 120 original titles. So
and they have to keep throwing stuff at the wall basically and hope something becomes a hit.
Correct. So that's the strategy. It's certainly with their binge strategy, which is unique to them. They have to have that high level of content. So and you catch one of those big hits like a Stranger Things, which was now I think it's in its 3rd series. We're going to have the 4th series coming out likely next year, but that has been a top 5 demanded title for the last several years.
Never seen it, by the way. I'm embarrassed to say. Don't know anything. Sounds like some science fiction thing. It probably has nothing to do with that. Heard a lot about it.
No, it's definitely sci-fi. It's a fun one. I mean, there's too much to watch out there. But
how many people would see that? Let's say of the 180 million paid subs from Netflix, would a third of them look at Stranger Things? 20% of them? What's a hit?
That's interesting. So Netflix defines hits as basically within the first 30 days of release. And to give you an example, Bridgerton, which was released just after Christmas, they coined it their biggest hit ever. Bridgerton, I think, had about 82 million viewers of that title, and that's within a month's time frame. I think importantly, though,
as a reminder, by the way, there are about 330 million-ish people living in the U.S., and Netflix, of course, is a global platform, but that's a big number. 82 million is a big number.
Yeah, but I think importantly, to maybe caveat that number a bit, is that's in the first 30 days, and as that's worked for Netflix in the past. However, we've had obviously there's more competition coming on board. And I think importantly, we're going to be looking at the longevity of hits, and that's why I point out, like a Stranger Things, we haven't seen the last series in 2 years, and yet it's still a top 5 title. Mm-hmm. Others like The Mandalorian at Disney, which we can get into, similar. So longevity is important. and I think, because Bridgerton came out in the first quarter of Netflix, and we all know that Netflix had some pretty poor sub numbers in that quarter. So you saw a big spike, and then you saw sort of a churn off effect. So it didn't stick, if you will. So you really need, the titles have to be hits, but there has to be, longevity of those hits, I think, more so now.
Let me ask you this, and then we'll move on to Disney on Netflix. If you were running the show, would you have, instead of dropping all the episodes at once, would you stage them out on a weekly basis?
I think if I could reset the clock for Netflix, it would be to remove the binge aspect, because the binge aspect is really, I think, what kills them when it comes to their sub numbers quarter to quarter. And if you compare that to like a Disney Plus, which, a WandaVision that they had in the same period, those titles are spread out over 7, 8, 9 weeks. And so there's longevity of that subscriber. And I think for Netflix, you got to keep spending. So that would be one suggestion.
By the way, can you put the genie back in the bottle and say, it was good while it lasted with the binge thing, but here we are on Netflix and we're going to go to the weekly release model? Is that possible, or would that just be considered like heresy?
What's interesting is most would say that it would kill the Netflix model because it was sort of built around binge. However, their competition doesn't have a binge component necessarily in terms of original content that's produced. Mm-hmm. Certainly library content you can binge all you want.
Right.
So I honestly think it would be interesting for them to at least trial some titles in a non-binge and just see what kind of pushback. They'll get pushback, but I'm not quite sure that is what's going to create more churn for them.
An A topic in their board meetings, and I assume it's been there for a long time. Let's move on and talk about Disney out of nowhere, and just what are they doing right? I've got some of my own opinions here, but what are they doing right?
Well, I think Disney has the full package, certainly family to, I'd say more of his adult content falls on the Hulu platform. But I think Disney just has this global brand that you just turn it on and people watch it. And that's essentially why I think they've had so much success. If you look at their trajectory. And
by the way, you turn it on and people watch it because they know the characters, or they trust the brand, or both, or what is it special about Disney?
I think it's both. I think it's the brand. I think the UI, the Disney Plus UI, is very easy, very well laid out. The Star Wars franchise, I have 3 boys. I mean, it's all they watch. I mean, it's a massive franchise, and you've got Marvel, you've got National Geographic, lots of great content there that I don't think a lot of people even know is there.
And, what do you call it when they take like a character or a movie and then they kind of splinter off of that? Obviously like WandaVision, or like I forget what the animation is on Star Wars right now, like Bad Guys or something like that. What's that? Is there a phrase to describe when they do that? Because Disney does it magically.
Yeah, it's no pun there. It's really the IP that they have, that's that built-in IP that we heard Amazon talk about with MGM. You're buying IP, you're buying the Bond series that you can do this splintering and create adjacent series.
Series, that's the phrase I was looking for. Okay.
Yeah. So I think
right.
They're doing that right. They have I think the biggest challenge for most streaming platforms is growing outside the US. And there's obviously language barriers, culture barriers, and Disney has already had that library built. So they essentially, if you look at their trajectory since they started in late 19 with Disney Plus, the growth trajectory of subs is higher than Netflix was in any period of its growth cycle, and it's largely because they've had both U.S. and importantly outside U.S. to
what are they at? Just a reminder, paid subs between Netflix versus Disney.
Yeah, so we're at roughly, if let me give you exact numbers here, Gene. So on Disney, we're looking at close to, right around the 150 mark, and on Netflix, we're close to the 220 mark.
Okay, but obviously Disney has come from basically zero, so they're making that ground up, as you said, very quickly.
Yep.
I'm curious, just a total side topic, and then I want to get your takeaway on what you'd recommend for Disney if you're running the show there. But some of the content, has it been canceled? Have they, because some of the legacy content, and there's some questions now about this, and this kind of maybe even plays into the whole cancel culture theme. Has Disney taken some hits for that, or have they largely navigated around some of the headlines?
I think just largely they've navigated around that pretty well. I think you brought up in the past like the Jungle Book and others, but I think there's I haven't seen any impact, if you will, to their sub
Yeah,
base.
people still love it. Yeah,
it's a relative game, obviously. So I think
sure.
everyone has some of that to manage this time.
And if you're running Disney next 5 years, what decisions would you be making now?
I would say Disney is really just about continuing to leverage that IP. I mean, they have the library. I think the adult the adult side of the content is really leans more to Hulu, and I think that's a piece that they'll need to think about how they'll invest that a bit more. I think there's been some questions in terms of around really how much dedication they have to growing that Hulu original slate relative to Disney Plus. So I think that just gives them a bit more balance.
Final question on Disney. Can you remind me the relationship between Hulu and Disney?
Yeah, so Disney essentially owns, outside of a 5% stake in the entire Hulu
Okay. It's
platform
their property
now.
effectively.
Yep.
Okay, makes sense. We're going to jump past Amazon Prime because I think people have had their fill of that and MGM, and kind of get down to the sports side and talk a little bit about Peacock and Paramount, and what do those players need to do the speed through? I think CBS Viacom too is. What do sports players need to do? And they're kind of getting needled away. Amazon's paying up for some Thursday Night Football content. What would be your recommendation for the sports streaming services?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting because this will start to heat up the end of this year with the NFL. So you have Peacock and Paramount Plus that have NFL franchise rights. So Peacock is Sunday Night Football, and then Paramount Plus has Sunday afternoon. I believe it's the NFC. So they have indicated that they will turn those live simulcasts on their service. You have Fox that owns the AFC NFL rights. They have not indicated yet when they plan to turn that on in terms of.
By the way, Mark, will they be ad supported? Can I watch my local team and ads, or do I need to subscribe to get those? Do you know?
So they'll just be simulcasting the broadcast. So you will see the ads that you normally would see on the broadcast channel, if you will.
Okay. Do you need to sign up for the monthly subscription too, or can you just go right to the ad-supported model?
You would need so they have so Peacock actually has a completely free service ad supported. I'm pretty sure they will not be simulcasting them on the free, but they have a $9.99 and a $5 service, and I suspect you'll have they may push it to the $9.99, but I'm not sure. We'll wait and see.
I got to pay to play, pay to watch the ads. It sounds fine.
They got to pay for that NFL license. They're paying close to $10 billion over the next 10 years for it. So it's costly. They got to get people to pay for it.
And that's still the gold standard of sports content, NFL.
By a long shot. I think I think I saw a stat the other day. If you take the top, the NBA, baseball, and NHL combined, viewers are still under NFL. So it's a massive franchise that
makes sense.
That we'll see turned on this year.
So is that your recommendation to those two? Don't give up even though you're paying up, don't give up on the NFL.
I think the challenge for Paramount Plus and Peacock, Paramount Plus obviously under Viacom and Peacock under Comcast NBCU, is they don't have the library strength that a Disney, a Netflix, Prime Video has, and certainly the new, I would call it new big media coming out next year, the combination of AT&T's Warner Brothers, HBO, and Discovery Plus, which will be able to go head to head with those three. So Paramount Plus and Peacock are sort of left behind. There's not a lot of content left out there for them to acquire. So for them to scale up, it really requires them to lean heavily on sports. And I think, as you know, the question will become is, is it just the NFL season that people sign up for and then they churn off? So those are some questions for them. But I think that, those two on them, on their own, I think it will be a bit challenged to scale up in terms of pricing.
Yeah, I can't imagine any other sport even trying to gain I'm old, 50. I remember hearing in the 90s that soccer was going to be the thing, and I'm sure it's made some progress here. It's a great sport, but I think we're kind of locked in our ways here in good old USA. Well, good news for us is I'm smarter on those top three here, and 3 is the magic number, the average number of subscriptions that a typical streamer has. So we've covered all the most important points here. Thank you, Mark, for joining, illuminating. It's going to be evolving topic, of course. On behalf of Mark, Gene, myself, and Loup TV, bye for now.